it's going well. I had surgery February 17th. I tore my left ACL. And it's just kind of one of those things that, it's weird. It's funny to see fans write and say that, me and Eddie are injury prone, and it kind of displays, their innocent but obvious ignorance, because it's weird. I've been wrestling. My whole stint in Ring of Honor, I was never hurt, and I never got hurt in Japan, and it's weird. Just like the only two injuries I've ever had in wrestling, which is like breaking my leg, which was not a serious thing, it was a hairline, little tiny fracture, and blowing my ACL, is both just happened to happen within the span of 1 year. So it's like you take a 12-year career, and I've just gotten hurt twice. It just happened to be within the same year. So it's just kind of one of those things that it was a long time coming. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad it happened. And it sounds weird, but there was a lot of things wrong with my movement and like my body, and not that I was like beat up, but just a lot of things were just off balance, and I kind of predisposed myself to this injury. So knowing how predisposed I was to injury, I got off pretty lucky, because I could have really done some very serious damage to my body with how imbalanced I was.
Yeah, it's crazy. That is, those are two extreme injuries to get for somebody who didn't really have any kind of major problems, and I think it's fan conjecture that really it gets the frustration out of everybody, whether it is a wrestler or the fans themselves, because to say somebody's injury prone when you don't step through those ropes is kind of
right.
a hard thing to point the finger. But I think the nature of
right.
both is just the scary part of it, and as we look at injuries, especially to look at the WWE and see what they've gone through over the last year with injuries,
yeah.
how did you protect yourself more from the ACL, coming back from that, and how did you favor that, and then maybe the other injury kind of come about? If you're were you favoring anything at all during this last run?
Boy, this question, especially asking me, can get so complex, because I'm a med student, so my medical stuff's kind of my forte, So, but basically, I'm trying to think how to explain this so everyone will be able to understand. I don't put anyone to sleep.
Oh, please,
look at my wife. So basically, the body works like a car, So I could have a car, and I could have the greatest engine and the most powerful engine there was, but if my transmission's horrible, or my front axle or back axle is horrible, or the drive line's terrible, the car is pretty much useless when it comes to racing. So let's consider racing like high-performance sports, which is what I've done. And people need to realize, too, is not only have I been professional wrestling for, over 10 years, I also had 10 years prior of high-level amateur wrestling. So a lot of years of wrestling with no injury, because I've always been really, really committed to, sports science and sports medicine. But so when my body's kinetic chain is how the body works as one, it started with when I was 10 years old, I had a hip replacement, which I should have this great, cool story from. I was fighting off these ninjas or doing backflips off the cliff, but I off the ramp. Yeah, I should have this great story, but I literally went off a ramp that was like a foot tall and crashed my bike, and the bike was fine. I just happened to break my hip. But anyways, and then when I was 14, I had ankle reconstruction on my right ankle. Literally right before I started, right after I started amateur wrestling, and I wasn't even wrestling. So those things created long-term things that I learned to compensate, and then through just a lot of wrestling. Another thing people don't realize about my professional wrestling career is I've never taken time off. I've wrestled, I've literally wrestled full time since the start. I've never, just done a thing and then take a month off and then wrestle once a month. I've always been full time from the very start. So. A lot of not so much the wrestling, but the long car rides and a lot of the long plane rides in Japan, or to and from Japan, I should say, really created tightness and kind of broke that kinetic chain. So I started favoring things, and it's just the body's an amazing machine. It can compensate for so long, but when it finally breaks, it usually breaks hard. And mine just happened to break in front of people in the ring, but. It's good because I've really hooked up with some really high level trainers here. Because I don't have a ton of time left in professional wrestling, but the time I have left, I really want to go out on top. So I've actually started working with Nick Curson, and he's a guy who trains UFC lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos, and Fabricio Verdum, the heavyweight champ. And So I'm going out to California to train with him, and I'm also working with Dr. Lanil Mitchell, who works with a lot of pro sports athletes out in Pittsburgh. So I'm kind of spanning both coasts to just find the best trainers and the best physical therapists. I want to come back, and I know and it's very flattering how great people have said I've been in the ring. I know I was really not living up to my potential the last year of wrestling, just from my own body, placing the own limitations that I did on my body. So I really want to rectify that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll join that crew with saying you definitely, still being a fan of what you do, you definitely looked great from my perspective. So, I mean, that shows how good you are at your job. But, it's kind of funny. We said the same thing to AJ Styles after he was removed from the one of his last New Japan tours about his back. And that's that flight back from Japan to the United States. And, when you have a back injury, obviously being stationary is kind of dreadful. But now you being in another country and injuring your leg, how is that getting back? I mean, that must have been some sort of experience that you never had before.
The only problem I had was one of humility, because everyone on the TNA tour, especially like Rafael Marietti and Brian and Earl Hebner, were just the nicest people. Brian literally wheeled me around the entire airport down in London. And, Raphael made sure I got out there, and, Josh Matthews made sure to check on me. And, everyone was so absolutely, and John Gebjerg made sure he came right back and made sure everything was taken care of. And, the flight was nice enough. The flight back on Virgin Atlantic was nice enough to give me a row to myself so I could kind of prop my leg up. And it just sucks because it was I'm a very proud person. I'm a wrestler and a firefighter and a paramedic, and all of a sudden now I'm so crippled my wife's having to wheel me around in the airport in a wheelchair when I land in St. Louis, and it's just kind of humiliating, you know what I mean? But it was what it was, man. I mean, I could have been coming home, paralyzed, you know what I mean? So it could always be worse, or I could have not came home at all. So it could have been very much worse. Yeah,
definitely, and it could have been, and thank God, it wasn't, and now you're back on U.S. soil. But the tour itself was kind of interesting because, you guys, it's prepped so far in advance. I mean, the tickets are on sale for nearly a year. TNA does such great business in the UK, but it also was mirrored with Kurt Angle's leaving of TNA, so it must have been crazy emotions just from the crew's sake of having Angle depart. You're injured, and it's such a big thing for TNA. What was that? What was the feeling with Kurt departing from TNA on this tour, and the severity of losing both yourself, the injury, and then a guy like Kurt in the locker room?
I think obviously we didn't know I was going to be leaving the tour. I mean, luckily I got hurt on the last day, so my work was done. But as far as Kurt, as far as I'm concerned, it was one of gratitude because, when you really truly care for someone, like how that locker room cares for Kurt and Kurt cares for that locker room, that it's always sad to see him go from a fan perspective. But if you really love someone, he's got to do what's best for him, his family, and his body. And he's done all he needs to do, and he needs to go and be with his family and heal up. And he's the one guy, I really wanted to wrestle. I didn't get that chance, and that really sucks. But that is the way it is. But, I did, and as it's going to play out, he did give me a very special gift, which, people will see soon. So, I was, sad to see him go, but, it's for the best. I can't be selfish, so you got to do what's best for him.
Yeah, he's definitely a very special individual, a very special asset, especially to that TNA roster. But I got to say, the TNA roster really has taken quite a great shape over the last couple of months, and the expansions of adding a couple of guys here and there. But one guy I think that really has kind of taken off is Drew Galloway. And what about him now being in that role of one of those, top singles guys? Whereas we all saw him in the WWE kind of get the shaft when it came to certain things, and now he's getting that chance to take off. What's your view on Drew Galloway taking that top spot now as we're going further into 2016?
Yeah, I didn't know what he did in WWE just because I don't have cable. Well, actually, I lied. I take that back. We literally got cable today. Hey, babe, dude, is that cable that we got? DirecTV. I don't know what the hell it is. But anyways, But anyways, I don't watch anything. So I don't know what he did in WWE, but since he's been in TNA, he's a great guy, man. I mean, he goes hard in the ring. You know, he's got that physical style that I love. And so I mean, I have nothing but positive things to say about him. The guy works his ass off. He's completely he's very, very committed to his craft, to professional wrestling, and to TNA. He's definitely a team player, and yeah, I've always had nothing but good experiences with him. So I'm very glad to have him on the team.
Now, obviously, TNA Impact Wrestling has moved to Pop TV now, and our friend of the show, Mike Johnson, who writes for PW Insider, was saying that a lot of people don't know this, but TNA episodically is one of the best shows on TV that nobody's watching. What has your experience been like with the new, being on the new network of Pop TV?
It's been fine with me. I mean, it's I came in at the very end of the Spike TV, so I really don't know. I mean, it seems that long before, or maybe right before, I don't know. Me and Eddie got there is when TNA kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths. Which is unfortunate, but I had nothing to do with that, and I really don't want to, and simply just don't know the whole circumstances behind that, because it just kind of is what it is. But in the Destination America thing started off really good, but they just kind of I thought they just thought pro wrestling, not just TNA, but all the pro wrestling on their channel was going to do gangbusters, and when they saw that it wasn't, they just kind of turned their back on pro wrestling. So then us getting with Pop, they've been very they've done everything they say they're going to do, and they've been very gracious to us, and it's been smooth sailing, and and so it's been an absolute positive experience for me personally. But the thing with me is I'm probably the best person to ask, because TNA has been a positive experience for me. I wasn't there during what people say like the dark times of like Bischoff and Hogan, and then what other people say was dark times with Vince Russo, and everyone has their own personal dark time. Well, I didn't experience any of that. I was in Ring of Honor in Japan, so it's been all good for me. So and it's just a continuation of that. So it's I'm happy.
Definitely, and a lot of people would say the Wolves have been the best part of TNA since your debut, since your arrival, and it was kind of an interesting way to debut you guys with the whole MVP Dixie Carter, investor storyline. Is that kind of a good way for you to be debuted, so to speak, within the company, you think?
It's funny. At the time, I didn't think so, because all I do for my whole career up to that point was just, well, let's put us in the ring and we'll wrestle. Put us in the ring and we'll wrestle. And that's the answer everyone was expecting too. And that just shows how I just knew one side of the wrestling business, because it's kind of one of those things we'll put you in the ring, you'll go out there and you'll have a great match, and no one will be surprised. It's the Wolves, they always have great matches. Let's try to show another side of the Wolves. Which I thought they did really well when we first came in, and in doing that, that gave us something to add on to the wrestling that we were, that we could perform and we were comfortable with. So at the time, I didn't get it, and that's my ignorance. But looking back now, I was really, really thankful. That was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you guys there, no matter who they put you in the ring with, whether it's like Bromans or whether it's the Hardy Boys, you guys always put on the best matches. But you guys have been fortunate enough to work with some, pretty good guys as well. So what was it like being in there with the Hardy Boys? Because that was a very unique feud and very cool, and it was almost like, they were showing you, like, these guys can not only go and have great matches, but they can have great matches with these high-level, top, quote-unquote, famous stars.
Yeah, the match with the Hardys was it surprised me how it's kind of one of those things, it all just came together. I mean, those two guys, you would never, I don't think, maybe they don't know, or you would never think that they knew how famous they were when you put together a match with them, because they're so giving, you know what I mean? And they just want to make everyone look good, and they're very unselfish, and and Jeff Hardy literally has zero disregard for his own, or zero regard for his own body. So it was a lot of fun working those guys, and very, very easy, and they carry a certain aura about them that just adds to the electricity of the match, and that was really cool. And we were thankful for getting put in that position. We were thankful we delivered, and it was just a win-win for everyone.
What kind of relationship did you have with the Hardy Boys, or maybe just strictly on a professional level, or do you, are you friendly with them outside of the ring as well?
Jeff Hardy is a lot like me. He's very like quiet and just kind of keeps to himself. Like, not disrespectful by any means. He's very quiet and keeps to himself. And I can totally relate to him the same way. I met Matt when he was coming in Ring of Honor my last year there, and he was cool to him. And then we got saw each other in TNA. I think we saw each other in a couple of indies too. Like, he's always been really, really cool. And like, he was one of the guys checked in on me when I got hurt, and super, super cool guy. So no personal relationships as far as we're not friends outside of the ring, obviously, because they live in North Carolina and I live in Missouri. But very friendly guys. Awesome people.
And obviously, with the Hardys comes the Dudleys as well. Team 3D. You guys had a unique little feud with them as well. What's it like working with the Dudley Boys? Because they're in the WWE now, but they have that reputation, especially Bubba, being a little bit stiff or a little bit snug in the ring.
But that's right up my alley. That's right up my alley. Bubba's the kind of guy that Bubba's the kind of wrestler I was trained to wrestle against, because when Orndorff trained me, I was always taught first and foremost you have to earn your respect in the ring, and then that's the very definition of Bubba. He's hard, but he's fair. So if you can go out there and do your job, then you'll have no problems with him. But if you don't know how to do your job, you're going to have problems with him. And thank God we never had any problems. He was 100% giving. It's so funny when we first started the whole I think it was best of five. I think it was best of five. It was he was he didn't want to hear our ideas. They put together the match, just do your spots, kids, and and take this and da 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 da. Then towards the end, by the last match, we're telling jokes in the ring, and he's doing our ideas, and just had a he'll probably kill me for saying this, but the guy, he's tough as nails on the exterior, but he's a big teddy bear. He's a really good guy. He's a really, really good guy, but he would fight you to the death so no one found out. But he's a good guy, and Devon, I only knew him just in that feud, but super, super nice guy. Really, really nice. So it was nothing but good things to say about all four of those guys. It was a blessing.
I definitely want to get back to the Hardys and Dudleys in a second, but you brought up a guy that's near and dear to this show, and that's Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. What was training like under that guy? I mean, talk about tough and talk about, hard as nails type guy. What was it like training under Mr. Wonderful?
It was perfect for me. It was perfect for me because I was not a huge fan. I was not a huge pro. It's funny, I talked to my wife, Angelina Love. And do I have to call? Hey, do I have to call you Angelina Love? I feel so weird calling you that. Yeah. My wife Lauren, aka Angelina Love. I just feel weird. So anyway, it's funny. She'll tell me how she was this huge WWF fan growing up, and she would, babe, come here and talk to these people. Well, I can't remember anything. I can't remember half of what she says.
That's because he doesn't listen.
Yeah, so tell him you're a big fan of wrestling.
I started watching it when I was about 7 years old, and it was just the one thing that I wanted to be growing up that I never grew out of wanting to be, and became pretty obsessed with it when I was a teenager, and then started training when I was 18 in Toronto.
Yeah, so she can tell me all these matches. She's like, oh, babe, you should have saw, what was the match you were telling me you were jumping out of the gym, the King of the Ring match, and so she knows all these matches. Stone Cold became, Austin 316, all that kind of stuff, And I didn't watch. I didn't know. I remember I saw NWO shit in high school. I thought it was a band. You know what I mean? I just wasn't a fan of it. You know what I mean? Or not that I wasn't even a fan. I wasn't even aware of it. So me coming from just an amateur wrestling as a sport background, me being trained by Orndorff was the perfect intro because it was treated like a sport. You know what I mean? And he was very strict and stern, but he was fair. You know what I mean? And you went there and you trained hard. And I've been to quite a few wrestling schools all over the world now to do seminars or whatnot. And I've seen how lackadaisical it is and how lazy it is. And I just know if I would have walked into a situation like that when I first got in, I would have been like, nah, man, this is not for me, because I needed that, I needed that fulfillment of, like, that athleticism and then that competition of sport. So it was the perfect intro for me into professional wrestling.